Our school experience when it comes to sports. What did you all do in your games period?
Yeah, it wasn't called sports period.
Yeah, it was games period, but we also had one thing called...
Some children are, let's say, getting into sport too early. What happens then?
The basic stat is less than 1% of these kids actually make it professional. For 99% of the people out there, they should still let their kids enjoy the sport till the kid is ready and has really narrowed down after being exposed to various sports, saying, hey, this is what I want to do, this is what I love, and this is how much I want to give the sport.
There was one specific study in India around Kabaddi which found that 60% of injuries happen to Kabaddi players in the age group of 16 to 20, and it's mostly because of, they say, high specialization and certain muscles, certain movements are used more intensely. What would you say, Arvind, is the takeaway from this episode?
Yeah, so welcome to another episode of Gameplay Sport, and with me I have my usual suspects, Kailash and Rahul. So today we're going to talk about a little bit of children's play, school sports education, and what should parents be looking out for when it comes to their kids' education. So let's start with our school experience when it comes to sports. What did you all do in your games period?
Yeah, it wasn't called sports period.
Yeah, it was games period, but we also had one thing called mass PT, where all of us were wearing white uniforms Saturday mornings. We had to stand in very structured queues and lines, and we would do exercises on count when the PT master would count.
And the drum beats
Or the
going
drum
on.
beat, yeah. We'd go like 1, 2, 3, 4,
I
5,
remember
6,
that.
7.
500, 600 kids doing the
Yeah,
same
I had
thing.
no clue why we did it. We all hated it because...
But it was very serious.
It was
had to be,
extremely
like, really
serious.
done.
You couldn't
Yeah.
miss that.
Yeah.
People would faint, but people would still do it.
I also remember we used to wear canvas shoes.
Yeah.
What are called Converse these days.
Yeah, and canvas shoes, and also that had to be polished, white.
Yeah. I remember we used to actually use chalk to polish it in the morning.
Yeah, because
That's
if you
a
got
hack.
caught without it not being polished, you would be punished.
Yeah.
And who would punish you?
Yeah.
The
So
one
the
and
PT
only
teacher was the
PT
punisher.
teacher.
PT teacher
Always.
had this, my PT teacher had this sort of keys, like a bunch of keys, and he would just hit you on your back with the keys.
Oh, wow.
And
We do not
actually,
condone violence.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know if he actually hit anybody, but just the fear would be in our minds all the time.
I think in general there was a fear of the PT teacher. And in my school, I think he was kind of the only guy who was there. Most of the teachers were women. And he was just this guy who would shout. He was the disciplinarian.
Yeah, he would be called in for the really
Anything.
naughty children,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, but where did that PT come from? Like, that's the one thing where the PT teacher had all the power, right? And he or she was in charge on the stage and used to get some cheap thrills also by doing some weird things, right?
Yeah, I don't know where this idea of this like, mass or physical training.
Yeah, it almost sounds like militaristic. In some
It was
sense.
fully militaristic. I felt it was too militaristic. What do you think?
So it's interesting you guys say that. So I went and did a bit of research about where does the PT teacher come in the schooling system. And I was reading this lovely book, Nations at Play, A History of Sports in India by Ronojoy Sen. And I thought I'll just read a couple of nice historical anecdotes
Let's
to say
go.
how this imagination of PT teacher comes. So, some of the earliest schools in India, modern schools, British schools, came in the late 19th century. And there's a very telling quote by the headmaster of Harrow. And Harrow is this famous British school where famously Jawaharlal Nehru studies. And his name was Chester McNaughton, and he was the principal there from 1885 to 95. And he's given this is a quote from a speech he makes, where he's talking about the importance of sports in the empire. And he says, Englishmen, and he's of course referring to even Indians who are in the English army, are not superior to Frenchmen or Germans in brains or industry or the science and apparatus of
Early
war.
admission.
Yeah.
But they are superior in the health and temper which games impart. He goes on to say that the pluck, the energy, the perseverance, the good temper, the self-control, the discipline, the cooperation, the esprit de corps, which merit success in cricket or football, are the very qualities which win the day in peace or war. The men who possess these qualities, not sedate and faultless citizens, but men of will, spirit and chivalry, are the same men who conquered at Plassey and Quebec. So there's an imagination that sports kind of translates into building men for war.
Yeah,
Men for
I
fighting.
mean, I think that must have been the first recorded pep talk. Like, that's so motivating. Yeah, but it is getting them ready
the
for
drill
like.
master, the march pass, the disciplinary, that imagination is a very old one, which I think early colonial Indian schools.
And it continued to our times. I mean, I don't think anybody knew why we were doing all
Yeah,
this.
I think you see it's a very common experience, right, across the country where we all have done this extremely strict exercise.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing. So things have changed quite dramatically if you look at it now. Now, like aspirational school, if you think about it, has multiple coaches. So we used to have what, 1 or 2 PD teachers for the entire school.
One.
Now, like some of these schools have 14, 15 coaches. So there's no PT teacher anymore. There are coaches and they are specialized in certain sports, right? So
Like what kind of sports do you find?
like we would have like, let's say 2 basketball coaches, a swimming coach. If the school has swimming pool, of course, these
Tennis coaches?
sort of schools.
Sounds utopian.
Yeah, you
Imagine
think
2
so, right?
basketball coaches in school.
Exactly. I mean, we were in a very different era, right? So this is what is being looked at as the new sports education, where a school should have all the infrastructure, specialized coaches, specialized training for these kind of sports, right? So that's, of course, it's not true in India because I'm sure a lot of schools still are the way it was when we were in schools. That hasn't changed. But this is sort of the
New model of
aspirational
schools
area.
are
Like
where
this is
it's
what
going.
all schools need to be. That's the thought process, at least that's there.
So you're saying that, in these schools, like kids from a very early age are learning specialized sports like football, tennis, basketball.
Yeah, like if you remember, like in your case at least, the PT teacher introduced a sport. I learned all my sports through others who are playing. Like somebody older used to play a sport. That's how I picked up sport. But here, like a child would actually go into a basketball class and would be taught rules and regulations and the basic skills of that with drills and things like that. So that's
So
how
they would
it's
learn all the sports, or like can children just choose, I'm going to learn?
very interesting. So at this point, we should maybe go and talk to Chelston Pinto, who is our guest for this episode. He's going to be talking to us about how do children learn sports these days. He's part of Rapid Sports Fitness, which works with a lot of children who are in elite sports as well. So let's go and meet Chelston. Hey Chelston, nice to have you on the show.
Hey, Arvind, it's really nice to be here.
My first question to you is about what do you think children need in terms of athletic development or physical development at different age groups and for different genders? Is it something different that they need than what used to happen earlier?
I think what's happening before and what's been happening now is from 0 to 6, it's more or less the same environment in terms of play, where
how it was for
like
us.
how it was for us, because you're playing with your parents, you're playing with people around you, your families, then you go to preschool, and up till when you probably join like a kindergarten, after which it changes.
So that's first block, 0 to 6 is like
that would be the first block.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called like the active start.
Okay.
And then we move into the fundamentals block. Now fundamentals, the key words being fun, it needs to be unstructured.
Okay.
Right? And I think that's where we see a big difference. Back when we were growing up and the previous generations, we were very creative with what we did. Equipment was hard to find. Structured play was almost impossible to get.
Yeah.
And that's where we used different things. I can remember growing up, I played a lot of leg cricket. So we would bowl with the tennis ball underarm and you would kick the ball to bat. Right, so with that, my kicking technique got really, really good, which helped me play football, right? And that's what we say about unstructured play, whether it's upper body movement, lower body movement, core and rotation. Growing up, if kids can play in different surfaces, different sports, different equipment, be creative, in terms of making games with each other, it sort of just adds to the mind in terms of also, it's called just developing a good movement pattern in which will help whether or not they take up professional sport post that.
So we've kind of brought this term called LTAD
Right.
in our conversations, and I thought it'll be great to get your views on that model. What do you think about the long-term athlete development model?
Right. So with regards to LTAD, I would say it was existing earlier. Right now, it's just a framework. Okay, so obviously originated from the US, where 0 to 6 is an active start. Kids are just sort of moving around, playing, learning to walk, crawl, all of those physical activities. From 6 to 9, where we have both male and female continuing to do that together, it's called the fundamental stage, like we spoke about.
Yeah. Okay, so you were talking about the LTAD stages.
Yeah,
only.
it's exactly that.
Okay.
Now, after the age of say 9 or 10, like you had mentioned, we start a little more of structured play, but they're still learning to train. Right, so it's a non-competitive environment as such, where they could pick up 1 or 2 sports and start to learn that. Post that stage, now what happens is male and female would have to be separated because it's also the stage of growth spurt. Female usually hit it a little earlier than
it's
male.
Like linked to puberty.
It's linked to puberty. It's linked to peak height velocity. That means how much they are growing vertically.
Oh, okay. Like I remember, I think around 7th or 8th standard, suddenly all the girls in my class grew taller than us, and then it took us like a year. So that's what
it is. So from my experience with the athletes that we've been covering over the last decade or so, in India, around the age of 12 is when girls hit their PHV. And around the age of between the age of 13 and 14 is when male or the boys shoot up. Yeah. So after that stage, generally they have to be separated because physically there would be a lot of differences, and that's when you start to move to a little more structured training. Now,
so till then you're saying the structure is actually minimal?
The structure should be minimal ideally. Yes, you train the skill, but you continue to develop the movement competencies. You continue to develop the skill factor more and more, because what will happen is after the growth spurt, once you have the movement competencies and your skill is really good in the sports or the sports that you are playing, the physical side will sort of you'll be able to step it up a lot easier, and the skill will go hand in hand.
If some children are, let's say, getting into sport too early, what happens then?
Right. So the basic stat is less than 1% of these kids actually make it professional. Right.
So only 1% of who?
Even 1% is a lot, to be very honest. So professional is where the athlete is earning a living out of that sport. They are doing it throughout the day. That's their life. And quite honestly, if you're below the age of 10, it's very difficult to pinpoint or pick a kid and say, okay, this kid is going to play professionally. Right. So 99% of the academies still have to ensure that the rest of the kids are also taken care of, because there are high performance centers like we do talent identification. I think what we have to also stress on is the potential identification, right? So how many from this big group can actually make it pro, and maybe for them there could be a slightly different curriculum where they're tilting more towards high performance, but for the rest of the kids it should be fun, play, stay active for life, and if not, things like overload, burnout, just moving away from or drifting away from the sport because they don't enjoy it anymore.
Okay, so like as a parent, what I should know is that my child might not be doing as well as another child the same age at the same point.
Right.
And that's okay.
Completely okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what we are saying is that if you have a child going to one of these academies, you ask the coach to keep the training more diverse, more movement based rather than sport based.
Right.
And you also look at your child developing at different points of time, in different spurts. Like nothing's going to suddenly happen. You will not have parity between different children. No comparisons basically being made. And if some coach is saying to you that your child will become a superb athlete when the kid is 7, what do I say? So, should I take that seriously as a parent?
Again, it really depends on the context and the sport, because I wouldn't say, there are some sports which are early specialization sports, and there are some sports which are late specialization in sports. So, for 99% of the people out there, they should still let their kids enjoy the sport till the kid is ready to, and has really narrowed down after being exposed to various sports, saying, hey, this is what I want to do, this is what I love, and this is how much I want to give the sport.
And you can't expect that of a child who is like 10 or 9. that could probably happen only when they are a little older, right? Once
So-
they have played multiple sports, they are confident and they're like, okay, I want to play this sport.
Yes, and it also depends a lot on the culture that they're brought up, whether, you know, in their place one particular sport was highlighted, or, you know, their parents have that experience, or what are they watching on TV, right? Who they want to be. So it really depends from kid to kid. But all of this, according to my experience, happens very naturally. So it doesn't have to be forced.
Hopefully coaches are listening in, parents are listening in, and are able to kind of use what we have talked about with Chelston here to make sports and play more fun and enjoyable for our children so that they can stay active for the rest of their lives. Back to the studio.
Hey, A2, how was your conversation with Chelston? Did you learn anything new?
Yeah, so Chelston's told us a lot of interesting things. We talked about early sports specialization, injuries, and burnout for young athletes, which is something that is because of this idea of coaching from a very young age, which I really didn't know could have happened. Though it feels like it's something that's moved forward from when we were in school, it looks like it has its own set of challenges.
So it's interesting you said that, because I recently saw that, you know, many authorities actually, both the IOA, the American Orthopedic Association, has said that if you start playing from specializing very early, there's a significantly higher chance of burning out or getting injuries. In fact, there was one specific study in India around Kabaddi which found that 60% of injuries happen to Kabaddi players in the age group of 16 to 20, and it's mostly because of, they say, high specialization, and certain muscles, certain movements are used more intensely.
Yeah, which kind of makes sense, because if you think about it, if somebody's playing, let's say, cricket from a young age and is a batsman, is identified as a batsman, they're pretty much using the same sort of body motion over and over from a really young age. That would set your body up in a very different way, right? It'll cause some muscle imbalances, and injuries are caused by muscle imbalances.
You know, I keep thinking of the example of Neeraj Chopra, because he started very early, and you'll see all his exercises, him bending his back more and more and more, and it's kind of, you see that, wow, that's all he's doing, and you know, what's the impact on the rest of the body?
So we never had that specialization which you would normally see. So something worked for us and something did
strangely,
not.
Strangely, it feels like there's something that worked because of not having that structure, not having that PT teacher out there, right?
Yeah, and I think it also comes down to, you know, the very difference between what we are training for, maybe, right? This specialization looks like very sport specific. What we had was free play.
So what should we do? What should we do at this point? Where can we take this problem?
So, I mean, I think probably parents would want to know, like, what do they need to know about their kids and who are they sending to coaching, they're sending to school to play?
It's funny that you're talking about it. It reminded me of something. In the place where I used to work earlier, we were doing a lot of long distance running, and we had a lot of parents doing long distance running, and they used to get their children to these running events to see. And because it was like a more close-knit sort of a community, we used to actually see a pattern there where a lot of these parents who were running, they weren't necessarily like world-class runners or anything. They were just doing this for fun. And the children somehow picked that up, you know.
So just seeing them, watching them do something.
They're just watching their parents do something outdoors, and that's something that became something that they wanted to do.
So would they bring the kids for the running sessions?
Not necessarily. Okay. They would just be there, and they would watch their parents do this activity. And it's almost like, I'm sure it's been told in your households also about reading, right? So if you see your parents read more, then there's a high likelihood that the child would read more. Right. So I think play and sport is not very different.
Do you think that's why Bronny James came to LeBron?
So I was thinking, you know, that I don't think the onus should be only on parents. There are many stakeholders in children's education. I remember you were talking about, you know, that you've been interacting with physical education teachers across different of our Azim Premji Foundation schools. Like, can you tell a bit about what's the changes that, you know, coaches or physical education teachers can bring in?
Yeah, so in fact, the NEP right now is also talking a lot about this, right? So it brings in the ideas that Chelston introduced to us through LTAD, which is how can we have more unstructured spaces at a younger age? Can we have more free play at a younger age? And how do we sort of look at age-specific
So it will be different from like under 6 years, between 6 to 9, and like each is kind of visualized differently.
Yeah, so the PE teacher's role is now more important because of the new rules that we are talking about. So the coaches, the PE teachers have to be more updated with what needs to be done at different age groups. So age appropriate training is becoming a big thing. So that onus is on educators.
I think a lot of school sports get very oriented towards excellence, like your school students going and playing outside, or I remember you used to have inter-house competitions. But maybe one of the different ways is that schools also start thinking about how do we create spaces for just playing and time for playing, which means a lot of reorienting the schedule of classes, reorienting how schools use, in many cases, very limited space, how to sort of allocate it.
Yeah, I think that's especially, play becomes important also to show that you can do with, school infrastructure unfortunately is across India is very bad. There's a lot of funding which is required, but I think there is a kind of funding which is only giving a lot of equipment, right? You give a school 15 cricket bats and balls, and then you ask everybody to train. I think that will be bad, but just giving more equipment so that everybody can try out more things and be more free with the trying, I think that will be really good. That's what would make me go play sport.
Yeah, and you can also see now that there is an identification of this as a problem. I have been actually noticing there are now organizations who are setting up just play spaces for children.
Yeah,
Something that's happening in Bangalore. I'm pretty sure it'll pick up, and there's an opportunity here, I feel, for organizations to also create spaces like this where maybe parents can play with children, right? Spaces where they can share and have
I think public spaces in general are very important. Think of a city around a coast, right? If you see the beach is where always play is happening, either with children or... So I think public spaces like that, or even parks here, Cubbon Park might be a superb place where you see, people play of different ages interacting. I think a focus on opening up public spaces will automatically encourage playing.
What would you say, Arvind, is the takeaway from this episode?
Yeah, so I think what we can definitely say is play is very important, and it has been sort of ignored over the last few years, where I think sport is taking the center stage and play is taking a back seat. So play is very important, and play is important not just for our children but for us. And what is also very clear is that children play more easily when they see their parents also involved. So parents' involvement is crucial. The school's involvement is crucial. The schools shouldn't keep things as structured as they are, and they should have more space for play and not just for sport. The coaches' roles and the educators' roles are important, where they need to also have this new idea of age-appropriate training and make sure that children are doing the right kind of things at the right age. So largely, if we manage to bring play more, the prominence of play more in our society through different interventions across all the different stakeholders, that's what we really need to happen.
So folks, there you heard it. Now you need to tell us what your PT master did. For me, it would be show me your nails, have you polished your shoes, and run around the ground. So comment, subscribe and share, and please tell us what were your experiences of playing in school. See you next time.
You're listening to
आप सुन रहे हैं
You're listening to
നിങ്ങൾ കേൾക്കുന്നത്
ನೀವು ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ
Rey Katha Sun Radio
റേഡിയോ അസീം പ്രേംജി
ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ